Hello. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of our locally developed TIA pre- and post-tests. This presentation will highlight the development of the test as well as the growth calculations that will be used to determine teacher eligibility for a designation and additional strategic financial compensation through the state's Teacher Incentive Allotment Program. This presentation is intended to be a companion to the TIA update presentation recorded in August of 2020. If you have not had a chance to view the update presentation, I do recommend watching that video first in order to gain an understanding of Garland ISD's design and implementation of TIA. Locally developed pre- and post-tests are available in the following core content areas: Reading and Mathematics at Pre-K, Grade 9 through 12 English Language Arts, Grades 9 through 12 Mathematics, Grades 9 through 12 Science, and Grades 6 through 12 Social Studies. Notice that the pre- and post-tests are developed for grade levels and content areas that are not currently assessed with the MAP Growth Assessment Program. Locally developed pre- and post-tests are designed to mirror STAR. This means that the intent is for both tests to measure the full scope of the course-specific TEKS at both administrations. Therefore, it is expected that student performance on the pre-test will be significantly lower than student performance on the post-test. This will allow us to measure the impact of year-long TEKS instruction and student growth. You can expect the length of the test and the distribution of TEKS by reporting category to mirror the STAR blueprints posted to TEA's website. Because our locally developed pre- and post-tests are designed to be course-specific and measure the full breadth of the TEKS during both administrations, they are considered criterion reference tests. This means that rather than comparing performance of one student to a group of other students, we are comparing each student's understanding of the content assessed. Our pre- and post-tests are developed by our GISD curriculum experts using a vetted item bank. Once assembled, the pre- and post-tests are reviewed by our team of instructional design facilitators and teachers. It's worth noting that teachers will not be validating assessments for courses they teach. For example, an Algebra 1 teacher may review the Algebra 2 pre- and post-test, but will not review the Algebra 1 tests. In addition to providing for content validity through the test development and review process, student performance data will also be used to validate individual item difficulty and quality. As necessary, based on student performance outcomes, items will be revised to ensure that they meet qualitative and quantitative expectations. The tests are planned to be administered via our online student data system, Eduphoria. It is critical that the locally developed pre- and post-tests meet the same rigorous expectations and quality controls that we see in our state assessment program. Therefore, the district is committed to ensuring that all locally developed pre- and post-tests are subject to the same qualitative development and quantitative review processes. To ensure that our locally developed pre- and post-tests meet these guidelines, the student performance standards, that is, the raw score or percentage of correct answers needed to pass the test, are set after the testing window closes, just like the current STAR programs. And because our local pre- and post-tests are being developed to mirror STAR, we will also utilize the same 4 performance levels: Master's grade level, Meets grade level, Approaches grade level, and Does not meet grade level. Of the 4 performance levels, the only non-passing performance level is Does not meet grade level. Remember, the locally developed pre- and post-tests are intended to assess the full breadth of the course content. Therefore, it is anticipated that student performance on the fall assessment will be lower than student performance on the spring assessment. And because we anticipate that student performance on the fall assessment is going to be lower because students have not been exposed to the course content. The results from the fall assessment can only be used to inform instructional decision-making. Knowing areas of student strength at the beginning of a course could help guide teachers in prioritizing instructional units. For example, if I am a pre-K teacher and I discover on the pretest that a majority of my students are able to count to 20 but are struggling with number recognition, I may want to continue to reinforce counting but focus my instructional time and resources on supporting number recognition. This may be an area of continued spiraling and reinforcement as I progress through the course scope and sequence. Locally developed TIA pretest should not be used in a student's course grade. Use of post-test data for student grading is acceptable, as students will have been exposed to the post-test content throughout the school year. Campuses are encouraged to have a consistent expectation for use of post-test data in student grades across all content areas. Remember, the teacher incentive allotment focuses on acknowledging and recognizing teachers based on student growth. So while student performance on pre and post-test can provide information about student achievement and acquisition of course content, the focus on student growth means that we will be calculating a growth score. For the purposes of TIA, student growth on the pre and post-test will be defined as the percentage of students improving their performance level or maintaining a passing performance level. This is similar to the STAR student growth accountability calculations. Student growth is calculated on the pre and post-test as the ability of students to improve their performance level or maintain a passing performance level. The goal is no regression. Students who in the fall performed at does not meet grade level will be identified as having met growth if they earn a spring performance level of approaches, meets, or master's grade level. Students performing at approaches grade level in the fall will be identified as having met growth if they earn a spring performance level of approaches, meets, or master's grade level. Student at meets grade level in the fall will need to perform at meets or master's grade level in the spring to meet growth expectations. And students at master's grade level in the fall will need to maintain their master's grade level performance in order to meet growth expectations. For the purposes of TIA, students must meet enrollment criteria in order to be considered in a teacher's TIA student growth score. First, the student must be assigned to the teacher's class at the time of the fall assessment. Next, the student must be assigned to the teacher's class at the PEIMS winter enrollment period, that is, the end of January. And finally, the student must be assigned to the teacher's class at the time of the spring assessment. It's going to be critical that teacher rosters are verified throughout the school year for accuracy. In addition, in order for the teacher's student growth measure to be valid, a teacher must have a minimum of 15 unique measurements of student growth across all of the classes and content areas they teach. For a pre-K teacher, this means that pre and post-test growth records will be combined for locally developed reading and mathematics tests. For a high school ELAR teacher with English 1 and English 2 preps, this means that the pre and post-test growth records will be combined for all ELAR courses they teach. To assist with understanding student growth calculations, the table on the screen displays the number of students tested during fall and spring administrations and meeting the enrollment criteria in the first row. In the second row, the number of students meeting their expected change in their pre and post-test performance level from fall to spring. And in the third row, the percentage of students meeting their growth. This percentage was calculated by adding together all of the students that met growth, that is the numerator, and dividing that number by all of the tested students meeting eligibility requirements, that is, the denominator. For our example pre-K teacher, 84% of her students met their pre- and post-test growth expectation. For our example social studies teacher, 87% of his students met their pre- and post-test growth expectation. Student growth is 40% of the total TIA score. The student growth score is translated to a 5-point T-test aligned scale in order for the TIA total score to be calculated. In order to earn a student growth score at the distinguished level, 86 to 100% of students must meet their fall to spring pre- and post-test growth expectations. Remember, this is calculated as the percentages of students improving their performance level or maintaining a passing performance level. The accomplished level requires that 67 to 85% of students meet their pre- and post-test growth, and the proficient level requires 34 to 66% of students to meet their pre- and post-test growth. Our TIA field guide includes a student growth measure composite score translation table that provides a direct translation of the rounded percentage of students meeting growth to the T-test aligned scale. From our TIA field guide, the student growth measure composite score translation table indicates that in order to earn a distinguished level of student growth performance, 86 to 100% of students need to meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation. The table provides the precise translated score. If 89% of students meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation, then the translated TIA student growth score would be 4.57. If 97% of students meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation, then the translated TIA student growth score would be 4.88. The student growth measure composite score translation table provides a similar translations for each of the 5 T-test aligned performance levels. The accomplished level of student growth performance has a range of 67 to 85% of students who need to meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation. If 82% of students meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation, then the translated TIA student growth score would be 4.24. If 67% of students meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation, then the translated TIA student growth score would be 3.45. At the proficient level of student growth performance, we see a much larger range. This is because the student growth composite score translations were developed to mirror a typical normal distribution curve, similar to the development of norms discussed during the TIA MAP growth presentation. The proficient level of student growth performance has a range of 34 to 66% of students needing to meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation. If 58% of students meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation, then the translated TIA student growth score would be 3.18. If 40% of students meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation, then the translated TIA student growth score would be 2.63. The final 2 T-test scale aligned composite score translations are at the developing and needs improvement levels. The developing level of student growth performance has a range of 15 to 33% of students needing to meet their pre- and post-test growth expectation, whereas the needs improvement level of student growth performance has a range of 0 to 14% of students meeting their pre- and post-test growth expectation. Knowing these translations can be very helpful to student growth goal setting. To ensure a level of uniformity across the state, TEA has established minimum student growth performance expectations in order for teachers to receive a TIA designation. In order to qualify for a recognized TIA designation, at least 55% of students must meet their student growth expectations. This coincides with the high-end performance within the proficient level of the Student Growth Composite Score translation. In order to qualify for an exemplary TIA designation, at least 60% of students must meet their student growth expectations. This is also within the upper range of the proficient level of the Student Growth Composite Score translation. And finally, in order to qualify for a Master TIA designation, at least 70% of students must meet their student growth expectations. This is within the lower range of the accomplished level of the Student Growth Composite Score translation. During your annual student performance goal setting, it is recommended that teachers set a minimum student growth target of at least 55% of students meeting their growth expectations. Of course, setting higher goals may be useful if a teacher wishes to pursue a higher TIA designation. While setting goals will not automatically guarantee a TIA designation, goal setting can be very powerful for maintaining focus throughout the school year. More often than not, when goals are set, GISD teachers have shown that they far surpass what they thought possible at the time of goal setting. We hope that this presentation has been useful for increasing your awareness of GISD's implementation of TIA and how student growth will be analyzed for TIA purposes. We are very excited about our implementation of TIA in GISD and the financial benefit the program will bring to teachers, our most valuable resource. Please do not hesitate to learn more about TIA through our local and state resources. And as always, if you have any questions, please contact TIA questions@garlandisd.net. Have a great school year.